Hello, everybody. This is the first video that's going to be in my kind of tutorial slash lecture series on learning how to use a Java development environment and eventually learn to program and develop different applications in Java. The aim of this first video is to, after you've installed all the necessary software on your computer and installed Eclipse, which is the most common development environment used for Java, I'm going to show you how to get started using Eclipse if you've never used it before, and get to a point where you can start learning to program and trying different things out. So we're going to do that now. So this is my little Eclipse shortcut that I've made over here, and you can just double click on that. The current version of Eclipse is Kepler, which you should have downloaded from their website. And so sometimes this can take kind of a long time to load, especially if it's your first time. And so you'll see this welcome screen. And what you're going to want to do is just click Workbench, go to the Workbench. And you'll be overwhelmed with a bunch of different windows that are all blank. I'll go ahead and full screen this now. And so there are all these little different windows, the outline, the task list, all these things you can kind of just minimize, and what you want to end up with is this big blank window here, your package explorer on the left, and a couple different things down below that we won't worry about for now. And I'll go ahead and make this a little bigger. So there is nothing in here. Eclipse doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know where to read from. We have nothing. So we need to make what's called a workspace. And if this is your first time installing Eclipse on your computer, it might actually ask you to create a workspace when you first sign in, or when you first open up Eclipse. What? Whoops. Okay. Right. So if you haven't used Eclipse before, it might ask you if you want to create a workspace as soon as you open it. It's not doing that for me, and if it doesn't, you can go over to File, Switch Workspace. I already have some here, but if you've never made one before, go to Other, and I'm making a new one called my Teaching Workspace. So your workspace is basically a giant folder that anything you ever do in Java gets saved in, all of your projects, all of your files that have to do with it. This is what Eclipse reads out of. And so I'm making one called my Teaching Workspace. If you use multiple, I use Dropbox. Google Drive is another common one. And so if you have a Dropbox or a Google Drive or SkyDrive or one of those sort of file sharing systems, I would highly recommend putting your workspace into the Dropbox like I'm doing, so that you can access and edit your Java and work on your projects from any computer that you have your stuff on, especially if you use like a laptop and a desktop or multiple computers in different locations. So I will do that, and it will restart Eclipse. All right, so we're back here. It looks the same, except now Java knows where we're working out of. And so we want to make a little project to start learning, and so we need to make a new project. And how you do that, you're going to go over to File, New. Anytime you want to create something new, you go there, and you get this huge list of options. And you're going to want to click on Java Project. And you're going to get this window that has too many fields in it, but all that really matters is this first thing, which is the name. And so I'm going to call this project Teaching Java. Well, actually, I'll call it Learning Java, since if you're a learner, it'll make more sense on your computer if you call it that. So Learning Java. And this is our project. All of this stuff you should not have to touch. And we're going to hit Finish. So now we have this nice folder over here. And if you tab it down, you get SRC, which stands for source. So source is where all of your code goes. And then the JRE system library is just a whole bunch of Java stuff that's kind of under the hood and you don't need to worry about. So now we have the shell framework for our project. And what you need to do is create what's called a class. I'll show you how to do it first, and then I'll talk a little bit about what it is. So you're going to right-click the source, go to New, and this time you're going to go to Class. So we're going to create this thing called a class. And again, a whole bunch of stuff, but the only thing you have to deal with is the name. And we're going to call this hello world. Both letters should be capitalized, and there shouldn't be any spaces. This isn't a rule, but it's a convention. And so when you're out in the working world or collaborating with other people, this is how you want to. There are certain conventions in programming in general for how you name things, so that it's a language, and so using the same syntax and same conventions in a language makes it easier for us to communicate with each other and understand each other. You will get this little yellow warning that says the use of the default package is discouraged. You'll learn what that means eventually, but it doesn't matter, so just ignore it. So you're going to hit finish, and now you're going to have under this, so you will have your source, then it will have created this little thing called the default package. Just think of this as like a little folder. Eventually, when you have huge unwieldy projects, you can make these different packages that have to do with different parts of your code. But for now, we're going to be working in what's called the default package. Again, don't fret about that too much. And so we have this file here called hello world, and it should open it up here, and it's just a text file that you can type stuff into. It will have created this shell, and it says public class hello world. And it will put these curly braces here. The way I code, I actually move the curly brace down here, except you know, it's also another convention to do it how it was to begin with. It really doesn't matter. But I think it's easier to learn and looks neater if you keep these two curly braces in line with each other. And it also says public class hello world. Right now, we have absolute, if you're learning, you have absolutely no notion of what this public means, and it'll take a little while until you can really understand what it is. And so, believe it or not, we can just get rid of it, and everything will still function just fine. So, in Java is what's called an object-oriented language. It's an object-oriented programming language, and vaguely what that means is that everything in Java is an object. And so when you have different things, they're all these objects, and they might be very real. You might have an object like a cat or a dog or a student, or you could have very abstract objects like images or maps or all these things. And all an object really is something that has properties and capabilities. Analogous to English, an object is kind of like a noun. And as we learn more about Java, we'll really understand what objects are, how they interact with each other, and how you can use them powerfully to interact with each other to create desired effects and different interfaces in Java. But that's a little later down the road. But all you need to know now is that hello world is actually an object. A class is synonymous with an object, and so if you ever use the word class, that means that all it is a thing that you can make. And so your program itself is an object. And in this case, we're calling it hello world because it's going to say hello world. And so basically inside these curly braces here are going to be the set of instructions that happen whenever this hello world happens. So now I'm going to do something else kind of mysterious that I will explain to the best of my ability, and I'll explain it better later as you learn more. So we're going to tab over. When you program, if you've never programmed before, every time there's like a different, programs come in layers, and there are outer things and inner things and sometimes little things. So think of it as kind of like making an outline for like a history or an English paper or something like that, where you have your main ideas on the outside and then you tab over as you get more and more detailed. And so this class hello world is the main idea. You can't get any more general than that. What we're going to do here is make something that tells the program where to start. So right now we still have this empty dysfunctional shell. And I'm going to type this: public static void main parentheses string open closed square brace args. And sometimes you'll see args 0. It actually doesn't matter. I will just use args. And then underneath that, once you go over here, you'll hit enter. Open a curly brace, And then when you hit enter, Eclipse will be nice and make this second one for you, because these curly braces always come in pairs, and they're like little encapsulators that show you where different separation areas are. So these words don't really mean anything right now, but I do want you to look at this main. Oh, and then also these don't really mean much either until later. Honestly, you never have to deal with them. But this main is something that's built into Java. And so when I run my program, it says, you know, okay, here's my class, but then it goes and looks for this thing called main. And once it finds main, it says, okay, phew, now I know what's going on, and I'm going to start reading the lines of code that are here, here, not her, here, etc. And it'll read down line by line through whatever procedures are here. So now is the place where you can start giving it commands. Up to now, we've just told it what it is, given it a little direction as to where it needs to start going. And in here, now we can actually run something and tell it to do something. So here's the first command that I'm going to show you, and it's basically going to print something out to us. It's going to say something to us. Again, the actual syntax and what all this means will become more apparent later, but for now, just follow along. System.out. Whoops, I'm lagging. System.out.print. And then we're going to open parentheses. And then Eclipse will probably be nice and put the semicolon on the end. I'll talk a little later. When you print something out, it has to be in quotations, so it knows to literally print it out. And you can say, hello world. Or if you want to put your name or say hi to anyone else, you can put that in there as well. So I'll show you what this does first. And any command in Java has to have a semicolon on the end of it. Think of it as like a period in English that tells you that it's the end of a sentence. Okay, now I'm going to go and run this. This play button up at the top in this little row of buttons here, this play button will run something. So I'm going to run that. I'm going to click it. It'll say select resources to save. And so all that means is we haven't saved our program yet, so it's asking us if we want to autosave. A lot of people just hit OK and don't read like the little boxes, but you should say always save resources before launching. Otherwise, this window will pop up every time you run something for the rest of your life, and that is not fun. So don't be lazy. Take 5 seconds to read these little windows when they come up and check boxes if it's going to help you. So I'm going to run this. I hit OK. And now in this thing called the console, it is printed out something that says, hello world. So basically, system.out is just a way to recognize for the computer to know that we're dealing with the system. And print is a capability that the system has. And so it's saying print, and then this is our argument to this little function. It's kind of like a function in math where, you might have f of x or something like that, and maybe f of x squares something. And so x is your argument, whatever you put into it, and then it does something. In this case, we don't get a value back, but we put in this string of characters in quotation marks these words, in lack of a better term as of now, and it tells it to print it out, and we get it down here. And so this is sort of like a Java sentence. If you wanted to do another one, you could just go down to the next line, because Java will just start reading line by line. And you can say system.out.print hello YouTube. Also, make sure you have a semicolon. If you don't have a semicolon, Eclipse, because it is your friend, will bring up this little red dash here. You'll get a red X here, and it'll do an underline like a misspelling in like a word processing program. And if you highlight over it, it'll say syntax error, insert semicolon to complete statement. And so you do that, and Java is happy. So I'll do this. I'll run this again. And now it says, hello world, hello YouTube. What you'll notice, though, is that they're strung all together. There's another command called println, which stands for print line. So if I change both of these to print line, it'll create a new line before it prints out. So now if I run this, you'll get hello world and hello YouTube. And so now by the end of this, we've seen kind of how to set up Eclipse and make it run with us, how to set up this sort of so far mysterious notion of a class, all of this mysterious stuff here. And at this point, we've understood that now we just need to start typing lines here if we want our program to do something. And when we type there, we can hit run, and it'll do what we ask it to do. So I'm going to say that concludes this little lesson segment, and in the future we are going to learn how to use things like variables, how to do more complicated things with our commands, and then eventually by the end of this playlist course, we will be quite adeptly using different classes and making lots of different functions that can do lots of different things and orchestrating them quite beautifully to make magnificent results. So hope that was helpful, and I will see everyone in the next video.